Reverend JJ, back at the Lotus Lounge. I hope everybody's doing okay, coping well, and taking care of yourself. I hope you learned something and gained something from some of the information that's been shared. You may or may not believe it. That is up to you. So I wanted to talk a little bit today and shift gears into understanding mental health a little bit more, which is what I had said that I was going to be doing with this podcast. So I do still, as I said before, want to have one of my girlfriends on here to talk a little bit about what she's experiencing with her employment and everything as well. But today I wanted to focus on, and I'm going to do an episode on each diagnosis and like what are we looking for as therapists and in the fields of mental health. What are some of the things that we look for in diagnosing, excuse me, and trying to understand some things. So today I was going to talk about depression and what that means and what is depression and how do we come up with these diagnoses. So I want to talk a little bit about what are the symptoms, what are the things that we're looking for. And I'm also going to share with you some of my own experiences, life experiences and things. I already have a specific event that happened early on in my life, just after I gave birth, that I'm going to share. So when we're looking at depression, okay, let's talk about this for a second. We all get down, we all get depressed. Everybody has moments of sadness. But when we're talking about clinical depression, it's something different. Typically, we're looking at a length of time. It's usually 6 months or more that an individual has felt down or depressed and unable to function. So this is what we're looking at. You know, whenever we're dealing with a actual physical diagnosis, you want to see, is it interfering with their functionality? We use what's called it's a GAF, a Global Assessment Functioning Scale. There's a CGAS, which is the Children's Global Assessment Scale. So there's one for adults, there's one for children. These are special certifications that many therapists obtain, and we have to do training on how we can kind of gauge where an individual is at with their ability to function. So you're looking at like 100, you would be at full capacity of functionality. Nobody's at 100. That's just unrealistic because we all have issues. Okay, so that's just kind of like say this. We all have issues. Everybody has a story. Everybody has something going on in their world, right? It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Mental health is an issue across the board. Doesn't matter necessarily of age, race, socioeconomic status, right? We all have times where we feel down or depressed. So we use this functionality scale. The average person is probably about 70 to 80 is usually where the average is at. And when we're looking at seeking out counseling, typically if an individual's functioning at about 65 or below, that's really where counseling could probably benefit if the person is ready. So we have to look at several different things. You know, are you motivated and ready to tackle your issues? Do you want to talk about what's going on in your life? Some people are resistant. Oftentimes we don't want to discuss the uncomfortable emotions and feelings. We don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations with people. And these are the things that I work with my clients. I have several women actually that I'm currently working with that have learned in life that they don't have a voice, and they just kind of went along with stuff and they didn't really assert their opinions, feelings, beliefs, or values. And again, I've said this before, these are messages that we've all received in early childhood typically, that are ingrained, that are subconscious programming. So these are things that are happening that sometimes people are not even aware of. So we have times in life where we're feeling down or depressed. And if you're not functioning, then that's a time to seek out help, whether that's somebody to talk to or a possible medication. And again, y'all know, if you haven't learned anything from my podcast, that I am not an advocate of pharmaceutical medicines. I would much rather prefer my clients to use natural remedies. So natural things such as being out in nature, communing with nature, getting sunlight, being out in the morning sun, receiving your vitamin D, right, from the sun. So when people said the sun can harm you, no, the sun actually gives you vitamin D. Or exercise, boosting endorphins, or getting support, talking to a friend, right? Coping skills. We're going to talk more about fucking coping skills. But if you're not functioning, that would be the time to seek some things out. Essential oils also help in a lot of different ways with relieving feelings of sadness. And there are actually foods that people can eat that will boost your mood and will boost your sense of well-being. Typically fruits, mainly. So I'm just going to run through the specific symptoms that we look for depression. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about my own event that occurred. So, yeah, I'm going to be vulnerable. And as I said before, this is raw. And this is me. And these are the things that have happened to me in my life, which has brought me to where I am today. And I'm in a really good place. So, symptoms that we look for depression. And just so you kind of see how this is going to go, I'm going to discuss anxiety and panic, also the symptoms of trauma, symptoms of an eating disorder, ADHD-like symptoms, and some mania, bipolar symptoms. So each episode, I'm going to touch on a different mental health issue. So today I'm going to talk about depression and some issues of psychiatric hospitalizations. So the first symptom that I typically look for when I am doing an assessment, creating a diagnosis, I'm looking at the first symptom. It's called anhedonia. 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 This basically means that things in life that you used to enjoy doing, you no longer find joy in. So, can you identify with that? Are you experiencing some things in life where what you used to enjoy doing is no longer fun? So, for example, did you used to like going to theme parks or spending time with your friends, and now you're noticing that you're not wanting to do that as much? Or you used to like to read, and when you go to read, it's just not enjoyable. Or you enjoyed swimming, and you're not doing it as much anymore. So I use the example of myself, and I used to enjoy doing yoga. And I still do enjoy doing yoga now, but I went through a period where I was grieving. And this was soon after Captain Mike died, and I shared with you that incident and what happened. I'm also going to talk about that in another episode in regards to anxiety and panic, because I had an actual panic attack. So again, that'll be in another episode, because today I'm talking about depression. But I also lost interest in wanting to do yoga. And it took me several years after Captain Mike died to get back into that. So I'm saying this to you because I want you to understand that these are just phases sometimes in life that we're going through, because we have to work through the emotion and process and be able to release and let it go. And I shared on here that my cat peed on my Zafu, which was my meditation pillow. It had the Om symbol on it, and Captain Mike gave that to me as a gift. And I carried that with me for 10 years. He died in 2010, so it's almost been 11 years now. And I've been carrying that Zafu with me around everywhere because that had sentimental value, obviously. But after my cat peed on it, there was no way that I was going to sit on that anymore. Like, for anybody that has animals and understands, you can't just sit on something after cat urine is on it. Like, it just doesn't happen. So I had to throw it out. And I was really upset about that because it meant a lot to me. And I had to release it. I had to let it go. But my point is I had that, and it was important to me. And I hadn't been utilizing that one either. Meditation was important for me, and I wasn't using that either. So I experienced anhedonia after Captain Mike died. That the things that I used to enjoy doing in life, I no longer found joy in. That is one of the first symptoms that we look for depression. Then we also want to look at a disturbed appetite. So this could go one way or the other. Disturbed appetite could mean you're either not eating at all and you don't have an appetite, or are you overeating and you're eating too much. So we often look at a weight loss or weight gain of significance. So I typically would ask a question such as, have you gained or lost 10 pounds or more in the last 6 months without trying? This is an assessment question that came from a prior employment. I really actually like that question a lot. And that helps us identify some things, because the question was without trying. So are you noticing that you are gaining significant weight or losing significant weight without trying? So you're not exercising, you're not dieting, you're not doing anything, you're not cutting calories, you're not watching what you're eating, you're not doing anything, you're just either massively gaining weight and noticing that your clothes are not fitting, or you are losing weight and you are noticing that your clothes are falling off. So we would want to explore that a little bit more. And for anybody that has had a significant weight loss or weight gain of 10 pounds or more in the last 6 months without trying, we would suggest a nutritional assessment. So I would always recommend that my clients have a nutrition assessment, so that way they could identify some things that might be going on. So we're looking at a disturbed appetite. Sometimes people eat their emotions, and that's where we have issues with eating disorders. So there's a tendency that we are using food as comfort, and the food becomes our means of coping, and that is not healthy either. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So disturbed appetite is what we tend to be looking at and looking for. So we also are looking for any issues with sleep. Are you sleeping too much or not sleeping at all? So a disturbed sleep or a change in one's sleep. And then we also want to identify how long has that been going on for. So for me, I've shared on here, I don't get very much sleep. I really don't sleep at all. I sleep, but I get anywhere between 4 to 6 hours of sleep. And I did have an incident on Sunday, so a week ago today, actually. It was the full moon, and I was on my menstrual cycle. And insomnia comes along sometimes with women in their menstrual cycles. So we have to kind of look at a variety of different things. Was it a hormonal incident that happened that the sleep got messed up? Are you feeling really down or depressed? Are you overwhelmed and anxious? So do you see how there can be so many different dynamics going on? So we really have to identify what is the root. So I slept fine the next day. So I was able to kind of come out of that. I had a bout of insomnia. And it was likely due to, I would say, the Scorpio intense full moon. I'm just going to throw that out there because it was a Scorpio moon and it was a super moon. And I know that I'm charged from the moon. I can feel it. I had a pretty much of a freak out meltdown a couple of days after that too. And I screamed in my car and it was just, I was like losing it. And yes, I have therapy too. For those of you that may not know, I have a therapist. I speak with her every couple of weeks for about a half hour or so, and it's my little check-in. So yeah, therapists get therapy too. And especially in this time that we have going on currently with the psychological operation and the biological warfare that has been occurring. Yeah, it hasn't been easy. And so I have therapy too. So we look at sleep. So, and at this present moment, and again, I've said this before, I'm not even sure what is real and what is not real, what is suggested for the amount of sleep that individuals need and what is not. I don't even know if it's true anymore. I saw a video earlier today also about eating habits and how eating 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, was actually something that was created and that our bodies don't really need to eat on a time schedule, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So now I'm questioning a lot of things. I think a lot of people are questioning a lot of things, and I'm glad that people are questioning. But so what has been stated is the recommended sleep is 8 hours of sleep. Anything under 6 hours, some medical doctors would claim that could potentially be causing damage over time to your body. So anything under 6 hours is what is said to be not healthy. I function and have been functioning for 20 years now on 6 hours of sleep. And I guess I'm not always probably the most bubbly and chipper type of person. So I don't know, maybe eventually it will start wearing on me over time. I don't know. But I function on 6 hours of sleep. My dad has been sleeping for about 5 hours as long as I've known. He's been getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock as long as I can remember. And he goes to bed about 10, 11 or so. So he's getting about 5 to 6 hours of sleep too. So part of me wondered if that is something that is genetic. But is it genetic or is it environment? Is it the Wi-Fi? Is it the blue light? Is it the 5G? Is it all the electronics that are on all the time? I mean, who fucking knows now? Nobody even knows anymore. But disturbed sleep. So are you not sleeping at all? And then I'm going to throw this out there. For those of you that question bipolar disorder, if you're going 3 or more days without sleep and you're just going like the Energizer Bunny and you have all this energy, that's not normal. So there's something going on. So sleep is very significant in understanding the mental health aspect of things. So lack of sleep is definitely an issue. And then getting too much sleep is also another problem. So are you like staying in bed? And I'm just going to say this. My boyfriend that I had talked about this before, Wall Street. He would spend days in bed. Days. Wouldn't even get up. Maybe get up to go to the bathroom. Maybe. But he didn't get up to take care of his dog. He definitely wasn't taking care of me. He wasn't doing anything to help take care of the kids. So he was neglecting himself and us. And that's the neglectful narcissist. I'm just going to throw that out there because that's actually a legitimate thing. But he would spend days. Excuse me. So there would be times too, even while I was with him and in that relationship, that I wouldn't want to get out of bed. So these are things that we're looking at, not wanting to face the world and just wanting to stay in bed. Now, I'm not saying that there can be a time where you're feeling lazy and you want to relax and you just want to chill in your bed. And I'm not saying that that's not okay. That is okay. That's an exception to the rule. So do you see how we really have to differentiate what is going on? It doesn't mean you're lazy because you're resting and relaxing in bed. And it doesn't mean you're depressed because you're taking time for yourself to rest and relax. Okay, that's okay. But we're looking at a pattern. Is this something that's happening often? Or is this something that happens once or twice a month maybe? So sleep obviously is an indicator. Disturbed activity level. Not feeling drive, motivation, ambition to do anything. Not having a lot of energy. So kind of like dragging yourself through the day. Like really not being able to make it through the day. Really struggling with your energy. Okay, something else we want to look at. Feeling tired and fatigued throughout the day. So just tired. Not being able to kind of like get it together to be able to be alert and awake, and not feeling exhausted and drained throughout the day. Self-esteem is a symptom of depression. Do you not like yourself? Do you say mean things to yourself? Do you have a lot of negative self-talk? Are you hating yourself? Are you doing things that might be self-injurious? And I ask my clients these things. So these things might sound kind of crazy to you, but these are things that I have actually been told before that people engaged in. So when we're talking about self-harm, are you cutting? Are you pulling out your eyelashes, your eyebrows? Are you putting yourself in situations that you are at risk or at harm? Okay, I had people that would eat things that were not good for them. That's called pica. I had a little girl. She was 10 years old. I'll never forget. And I helped her stop it. She stopped the behavior. She used to eat paper. It comforted her. And I had to work with her a lot on why she was doing that and why she hated herself so much that she was eating things and putting things into her body that were not healthy. That's called pica. There's people out there that ingest things that are not good for them. Some people, there was a woman, oh my God, she's probably causing serious damage to herself. She would eat Lysol wipes. And if you could really think about that for a second, okay, what would cause somebody to eat or ingest a cleansing product into their body? Because they felt dirty. So they're trying to clean themselves from the inside out, literally. And it's a complete and utter distorted way of thinking. But that also happens. So I have to ask people about their self-esteem and how they feel about themselves. And that is a symptom of depression. So obviously self-injurious behavior and not liking oneself and not feeling good about oneself is an indicator that someone might be feeling down or depressed. I use scales a lot. So 0, I don't like myself. 10, I love myself. Where would you fall on that scale for yourself? Maybe think about that. And also, we have moments of days that we are feeling insecure, and some days are better than others. And especially for women, especially around your cycle, there might be some times where you feel more sensitive and insecure, and that could also be hormonal. So again, we're looking at several aspects of the body and the mind. So I lump these 3 together when I'm doing my assessments. How are you feeling? Are you feeling hopeless, helpless, worthless? So hopeless Are you feeling like you have no hope for your situation? There's no hope for your future, no hope for you in your life? Are you feeling helpless? Nobody can help you. There is no help for you. Helpless. And are you feeling worthless? Nobody loves you. Nobody cares about you. So again, we have to remember that these are your feelings and your feelings are valid. And if you feel that way, it's okay. But we can work on it in a counseling setting to assist in feeling better and not feeling hopeless and not feeling like there's no help for you in your situation, and learning to love yourself wholly and completely. Unconditional love. Are you feeling guilty? Are there things in your life that you're guilty about? Do you have regrets? Do you wish you had done things different? Okay, I myself, personally, do not engage in the emotion of guilt. Guilt is a lower vibration, and I do not participate in that vibration. I don't have any regrets in my life, and I've shared some things on here with you, and I'm going to talk about something else that happened to me when I was 21, 22, somewhere around there. It might have been actually 23, but whatever, early 20s. I don't have any regrets. I have lessons. And I talked about that on an episode, and that's actually the title of one of my episodes. If you want to go back to that one, you can listen. But there's no regrets in life. These are life lessons. So are you taking what's happening in your life, and are you learning from it and growing from it? Or are you continuing to do the same mistakes over and over? So when people feel guilty, I find that it's because of the choices that they made in their life, and they are beating themselves up and feeling bad about the decisions that they made in their own personal life. But we all have accountability, and we are all responsible for the decisions that we've made in our life. Now, we might look back in retrospect years later and be like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, but we did. So you can't go back, woulda, shoulda, coulda, whatever. There's no reason to feel guilty. So again, we have to work through that. Difficulty concentrating and making decisions. Sometimes people think difficulty concentrating is an ADHD thing. They're like, oh, I can't concentrate, I can't focus. I'm scattered and I'm all over the place. But it actually can be a symptom of depression. So I remember when I was getting divorced, I was having a really hard time at work being organized. I was kind of floundering at work, and I was struggling knowing how to maneuver at my job. So I wasn't really functioning optimally. So again, we go back to that functioning scale. At that present moment, I was probably closer to a 60 or a 65. And I actually did seek out counseling at that time too. So I knew better. And I did see a psychiatrist at that time. And I did get therapy also. So I knew that I needed help, but I was going through a divorce. I was having a really hard time, and I was also in my master's program at the same time. So I had a lot of pressure because I was trying to graduate with my master's degree, and I was going through a divorce, and I was working, and I was taking care of my two young kids. At the time, they were 5 and 3. And I was basically a single parent because I was dealing with an ex-husband who likely was depressed, and he was on medication too. He was prescribed Remeron at one point. But so what I'm saying was I was scattered and I had to seek out help. So I actually took Lexapro and Klonopin at that time. Lexapro 20 milligrams and a low dose of Klonopin as needed. And eventually I didn't need the Klonopin because the Lexapro kicked in and I wasn't feeling as sad, down, anxious. And I forgot about this, and I wanted to bring this up too. I also took Wellbutrin at a time during the same time frame. where I was in this unhealthy connection with my ex-husband and, preparing for an escape and to leave that abusive relationship that I was in, because that too wasn't healthy either. And he was a narcissist, as I said. But I took Wellbutrin for about a week, and I was trying to quit smoking cigarettes. So, Wellbutrin is a form of Chantix. So you know how medicines have different names. So I'm pretty positive Wellbutrin and Chantix are similar medicine. But so I took the Wellbutrin for a week, and I remember sitting on my couch in my bedroom. I had a really nice, I'll never forget that bedroom. I love that room. I actually was sleeping on the couch during my marriage because my husband and I, weren't having sex and there was no intimacy, and I didn't want him to touch me, so I slept on the fucking couch for a while. But I remember sitting on this couch and thinking about wanting to slit my wrists. And this isn't normal. I didn't want to do that. I did not want to kill myself. And I remember almost kind of watching myself from outside of myself and what the hell? Why would you think that? And I stopped the medication and I called the doctor and I told him what happened, and he told me not to take the medicine anymore. So I'm also saying this to you too, because I want you to realize also that some medicines work for some people and some medicines don't. So that's why psychiatry is like a trial and error. And you really are a guinea pig, because we don't know how medicines are going to respond in one's body, because everybody's chemical makeups are different. So that's why it has to be so individualized and so specific. So yeah, I took the Wellbutrin for a week, and I literally thought about slitting my wrists, and I stopped it. That scared me because I didn't want to die. But something was going on in my brain, and chemically something happened, okay? And then I started taking the Lexapro after that. And I took the Lexapro for 6 months, and I felt great, and I didn't have to take it anymore, and I haven't taken it since. So sometimes what you need is a combination of the medicine to help you kind of slow things down and get yourself kind of regrouped and kind of get back together mentally, and realigning the chemicals in the brain, okay, the neurotransmitters, your dopamine, your norepinephrine, the serotonin, your GABA receptors. Okay, all these things have to sometimes be realigned because the brain gets rewired. Remember? Trauma rewires the brain, so it messes up the chemicals. And your environment messes up your brain. And sometimes your food and your sleep. All these things are compiled that can add to issues going on mentally. So I took the Lexapro and Klonopin. Like I said, I stopped taking the Klonopin after a couple of months. I didn't even get it filled anymore. I didn't need it. I only took the Lexapro. It didn't change who I was as a person. It didn't change my personality. It just helped me get grounded and better able to cope. And that's what the medicine is supposed to do. It's not supposed to change who you are as an individual. It's just supposed to kind of help you regroup. And I was in counseling at the time as well. And I was talking about all of how I was feeling with the divorce and everything that was happening. I had a real good, close-knit group of friends. And I was getting ready to graduate with my master's degree. So I gained a lot of insight and understanding into who I was as a person. And I did some work. I read the Codependent No More book. I did the assignments in the book. And I really put forth the efforts to make the changes in my life that I needed to. So I can only tell you what I've done to help myself. And I'm in a much better place now. Now, yeah, I have moments. And I freaked out the other day. That fucking cat, man, with the going into heat thing. I don't know if anybody's had a female cat before, but I never experienced that. And I have the appointment on the 13th, so I'm finally going to get this taken care of. And she's now stopped. It lasted about a week, but I didn't sleep during that time either, so that was just horrible. But dealing with that wasn't easy. So I lost it. And again, everybody's allowed to lose it at one point in time. Okay? It's not all rainbows and sunshine. Okay? Those people out there that are claiming to be these light workers or star seeds or whatever you want to call yourself, it's not all love and light. And if you're not dealing with your shadow side and the darkness, the dark parts of yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you are not really truly being authentic, and you're not being true to yourself, because we have a shadow side and there is a dark side, and we have to learn to own that. So concentration and making decisions. Are you struggling with that? An example that I use with my clients when I do the assessment is I'll ask them, when you go to a restaurant, do you have a hard time coming up with what you're going to decide to eat? Like, do you stare at the menu and it's just like so overwhelming that you just don't know what to choose? So are you having a hard time making decisions? And are you scattered, disorganized, and having a hard time being concentrating and focusing? So we also want to look at the last symptom that we look at is isolation. So are you isolating and keeping to yourself? Are you not wanting to go out with your friends? Are you not wanting to be out with others? And I've discussed this before, and I've said this on here, that the social isolation that was created with COVID is a torture tactic. So whether you believe me or not, I don't care. It's documented. It is used as a torture tactic. So forcing people to social distance and not be around others is a form of trauma. So we're being traumatized with this. So again, though, outside of COVID, are you finding that you're not wanting to spend time with others? Are you isolating? Are you keeping to yourself? Are you in your room, not kind of engaging, not wanting to go out and about? So that covers most of the symptoms. That's all the symptoms that we're looking at for depression. But then also at the same time, we're looking at length of time. So sometimes people can be irritable and cranky and have kind of like a short fuse. So I would ask questions like, are you irritable more often than not? So out of a 7-day work week, or a 7-day week, not work week, out of a 7-day week, 5 out of 7 days, are you feeling cranky and irritable? If the answer is yes, then we might be looking at some issues of depression. So we also want to find out, have you ever been hospitalized before? So obviously, if there is a history in the family, or there's been times that an individual might have been hospitalized, these are key indications that there could be a predisposition, or that might be a contributing factor to one's feelings of sadness. So we ask about, have you ever had thoughts of suicide? Have you ever acted on those thoughts? Okay, so there's a difference. Sometimes people have thoughts of wanting to die, but it doesn't mean there's an intent. Okay? We also want to look at, is there a plan? Do you have a plan? Do you know what you're going to do? Do you have an idea as to what you would use? So some people would say, I would shoot myself. Okay? If I'm dealing with a kid and a kid says to me, I'm going to shoot myself because he's angry about something and he's upset and doesn't know how to express himself, then my follow-up question is, do you have access to a gun? Okay? So we want to look at intent and lethality. So is there an actual intention of wanting to die, or are you feeling so down that you don't want to live? Okay? That can be treatable. And that's something that we can work on in counseling. And that's also something that maybe some lifestyle changes will need to happen. And this is what I think a lot of people don't always grasp, is that counseling actually takes work. Life takes work, right? We have to all be putting in the effort. I mean, even in relationships, think about in a relationship. I'm not going to stay with a guy that's not putting forth any effort. If he's giving me breadcrumbs and giving me minuscule efforts, like maybe he messages me once a month or once a week, give me a break, dude. That's not an effort. No. But again, you have to put in effort for your own life as well. Sometimes changes in life need to happen, and we have to acknowledge those lifestyle changes. So if one is feeling suicidal and they are actively suicidal and they are in my presence, likely they'll be Baker acted. I've only Baker acted, I think, 3 clients in my entire history of mental health service and treatment. I'm pretty positive it's 3 clients I've had to Baker act because I had to step in to intervene to protect them and save them. And I have I'll share with you an instance with the client years ago, an adult. She was under the influence of alcohol. She was high on cocaine. She called me at 10 o'clock at night and said she was going to kill herself. And I called the police and had to send them out to her house. And they intervened and her life was saved. So yeah, it was 10 o'clock at night and I'm not on call typically. But I saw the call come through and I answered. And when I answered, I had to step in and I had to intervene because she was slurring her words. She wasn't making any sense. I could tell that she was under the influence and she was talking about not wanting to live. And they found her. She actually took off from the apartment. I told her I was calling the police because I have to sometimes tell these people. So this is why sometimes people don't really understand how difficult it is to be a therapist, because we really have to do things sometimes that our clients don't want us to do. Do you think she wanted me to call the police and have her Baker acted and sent to the psychiatric hospital? Of course not. But sometimes my job is to protect people when they can't protect themselves. And that's a really hard fucking job to do. These are decisions that licensed clinicians have to do. One, to protect themselves, because I don't want to lose my license because I didn't step in and do my job. I can get sued. If I didn't do anything and her family knew that she called me and I didn't do anything, I could lose my license and everything I've ever worked for. So one of it is CYA, covering your ass, but also I care about my clients. I don't want anybody to die. So I have to do these things to save them. And I have another little girl, teenager, and I think I had to Baker act her twice. I'm pretty positive. So I think she's the third because I think it happened twice. I would have to really think about the other person if in fact there was another Baker act. I think there was. If for some reason it's just not coming to my mind. But I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. And in 20 years, I've only Baker acted 3 people and possibly one person twice. But it was a little 14-year-old girl. And I think I shared this on another episode before. But I had a home visit scheduled and I showed up at the house and she literally was sleeping outside of her home. And her parents were there and nobody did anything. And I drove up and I pulled up and she literally was sleeping on the ground, on the cement outside of her house. And I had to, I said to the mom, I said, what is going on? And the mom told me that she took some kind of medicine and she said she was going to let her sleep it off. That's what the parent told me. She said she was going to let her sleep it off. I said, no, I'm calling the police. I have no idea what's going on. I'm calling the police. So I called 911 and I was online with paramedics and they immediately sent the ambulance over. And they had told me on the phone that if I hadn't called when I called, that her respirations would have stopped and she would have stopped breathing. So do you see how difficult of a job this is sometimes for us? The parent didn't even want me to call. That parent could have let her child die, not knowing, because she didn't know the damage that was caused. But I got, the ambulance showed up, paramedics were there, fire truck was there, all this shit went down, and thankfully, Her stomach got pumped and she was saved. But if I hadn't been in that moment there at that time, so do you see when I say everything happens for a reason and you're right where you're supposed to be? If I wasn't who I was, number one, this passionate and intense and lover of my job and of people and wanting to be of service, if I wasn't who I was, that little girl would have died. And I could have lost my life and my career. Also, again, if I hadn't stepped in, but I knew better. Because I knew that parent didn't know what the fuck she was talking about. And I called. And I saved her. And I don't know where she is now, and I hope she's doing well, but Lord have mercy, she had some issues. But again, a lot of it was her environment. Her parents didn't love her. Her parents weren't giving her what she needed. Her parents were traumatized. Her dad was disabled. I mean, there's just so many things. So when we're looking at feeling down and depressed, there's so much to take into account. So I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to let you in. I was Baker acted. I was hospitalized. I think I was 23. I had just given birth to my first son, and it had been a few weeks, so it had been like a month or so. I didn't drink at all during the 9 months of my pregnancy, so I had absolutely no tolerance whatsoever. And one of my girlfriends wanted to go out, and I was so excited because I hadn't been out. I hadn't been out partying. I hadn't been drinking. I was nursing. I pumped so that my son would have breast milk and I wouldn't have to worry about alcohol and all of this stuff. So I really felt like I was doing the right thing as a parent. So obviously I'm not going to give my son alcohol. So I made sure that he had what he needed because he was nursing. And I went out with my girlfriend and her husband and I tore one up. Okay. I was doing tequila shots. I was drinking Sam Adams. I was shot beer. Dude, I had so many shots, I don't even remember. And I blacked out. And I got home at 2, 3 in the morning. Okay. And I'm going to share with you what happened. So my ex-husband refused to let me into the house. He said I was too drunk, that he wasn't going to let me in. Okay. So he was playing games with me. There's no reason. He locked the door. I didn't have a key. I couldn't get in. I'm banging on the door. It's 2:30 in the morning. I am drunk. I went out with my friends. They dropped me off. They left me. They thought I was going to obviously get into my house. Why wouldn't I get into my house? I live there. So 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, I'm sitting outside my house. And my husband at the time, said I was too drunk and wouldn't let me in. So, being drunk and stupid and not thinking, I went and grabbed this pocket knife that he had in his Ford Bronco, and it was shaped like a gun. So yeah, he had this stupid little pocket knife that was shaped like a pistol, and it was just like nothing. So I grabbed this knife, pocket knife, pistol gun thing, and I said, "If you don't let me in, I'm gonna slit my wrists." And then he called the fucking police, and I got Baker acted. So I went to the emergency room and I was a hot mess. I have a fucking headache. I was all drunk and obnoxious and acting ridiculous. Not my best self. So they transported me to the Baker Act receiving facility. So obviously, as I've said, the process is you have to be medically cleared. I was drunk. They weren't going to send me to the psychiatric hospital, being completely wasted. I had already graduated at that time with my bachelor's degree in psychology. This was completely and totally situational. And if that douchebag had just let me into the fucking house, I would have just gone to sleep like a normal person after being out with their friends and getting drunk and wasted. I hadn't drank in 9 months. I had absolutely no tolerance. And I've talked about my alcohol use on here. And we already know that I'm a binger. Okay? We already know that I don't have a cutoff limit. Okay? I didn't know that when I was 20 something. I had to learn that. Now I don't really drink. The last time I drank was my birthday, and that was March, and we're now in May. That's the last time I drank, and I had 2 drinks. So I go to the stupid psychiatric hospital. They didn't even have me go into I was in the waiting area. I stayed in the waiting room. They left me in the waiting room. I didn't have to go into the actual community of the other individuals that were being held there. I was in a nice waiting room. They were very nice to me. By this time, it was 6 a.m. I hadn't slept. I was only there, literally, the cops showed up at the house around 3 o'clock. I got to the psychiatric facility around 6 a.m. They deemed me not a danger to myself or others. It was completely and utter bullshit. The cops should have never even taken me in the first place, but I was under the influence of alcohol. So obviously people don't think logically when you're, intoxicated. So I was there for about 3 hours. They called my ex-husband and they told him to come and pick me up. My husband at the time, ex now, told him to come and pick me up. And he didn't even want to come and get me. He didn't even want to come and pick me up. I'm pretty positive I had to call my sister, and my sister had to come and get me. I think he refused to get me. I'm not quite certain, but I'm pretty positive he refused to come and get me. So, of course, him wanting to be in control of my life and not even agreeing with what professionals were saying when I'm not a danger to myself. It was completely alcohol related and environmentally related because he wouldn't let me into the house. If he hadn't let me into the house, I would have never said, I'm gonna use this knife and slit my wrist if you don't let me in. Do you see? I gave him an ultimatum, but I was under the influence of alcohol. So yeah, alcohol is a problem. For those of you that are not aware, if you land yourself in a psychiatric hospital and you're under the influence of alcohol, that's a problem. So yeah, I acknowledge that there's a problem. I went to AA. I got a DUI. I've shared that before. So this is raw with me. This is who I am. This shit's happened. So when I say I've been through it, I've been through it. When I've gone through the mud, I've gone through the mud. When I've blossomed as the lotus, I have literally blossomed because I have been through some darkness and I have put myself through some darkness. I caused a lot of these issues, but also remember, 50% conscious, 50% unconscious, and trauma rewires the brain. I hope this helped. I hope you learned something. And we're now in season 3. And it's all going to be mental health now. This whole season is going to be mental health. So I will be touching on anxiety on the next episode. So I hope everybody's well. I love you. Stay in the love vibration. Do your best to take care of yourself. Stay grounded and centered. Check me out on my website. I've made some changes and I've added some things, and my podcast is on there. There's some YouTube stuff on there now that you can find. And I am continuing to work on some of my yoga videos and my mantras and meditations, and you can find all that stuff. Reverend JJ, I'll be trademarking that very soon here. Reverend JJ on YouTube, and then my website, jjlotustherapy.com. And there's all kinds of ways on there to connect with me and link with me. And if you need something, you can find me on Google, JJ Lotus Therapy Lounge, LLC. That is me. Namaste.